Well, hello, Sandy.
Amy, go Navy.
Go
I'm so glad
Navy.
the
I know
people are listening.
I'm wearing Navy gear today. Today was a bad
Yay.
hair day, so I was like, I'm putting on my hat and my Navy sweatshirt.
You know what? Now that trucker hats and any kind of hats and
Yeah.
stocking caps are popular, there is no bad hair day, is there?
No, there's not. It's great. Speaking of that, I am volunteering this weekend for the NCAA tournament that's here
Oh,
in Kansas City. I know I'm kind of excited, but one of the things that they're giving volunteers is a beanie hat. And I'm
nice.
like, oh, that's pretty awesome. So I saw that and I was like, well, that's a nice little bonus. I get to wear a beanie hat as a volunteer.
What a
So
great thing to throw yourself out there. That sounds like an awesome thing to volunteer for.
I know it's fun. It'll be, I'm helping on the media shuttles. So I was like, how much fun is that? So anyway, speaking of hats, that's what's exciting is going on here in Kansas City. Not very exciting, but fun for me. How about you? Like
Well,
anything?
I just have to say, with the NCAA tournament, my husband is a huge Purdue fan and a grad, and he is just now getting over the pain of their big loss.
Oh, you know what? I feel for him because I'm living in Kansas City and all the KU fans here are just in shock.
But how about those Blue Jays?
How about those Blue Jays and the Razorbacks beat
Yes.
KU and I was cheering for them. So, and then State, one of my kids is a K-State. So anyway, we got lots of good basketball.
We got lots of good, and by the time we'll know the outcome by the time this comes out. Everybody knows that it's pre-recorded now, right?
Right?
Well, at
Exactly.
least we're not giving anything away.
We're not giving anything, no spoilers.
We're
Uh,
confident in our decisions, right, Amy?
We are confident in our
Uh,
decisions. And today we're talking about confidence and we're talking about can you teach confidence?
mhm. And
And so before we start the conversation, what do you think?
what do I
Like
think?
yes or no? Is it a yes or a no
Oh,
before we
what I
start
think.
talking about it?
I think you can coach confidence. How about that?
Very good. Good.
So maybe
I
you
like
can
that.
teach it. So I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to put an asterisk and say coach by
Yeah, I
action,
think
by coaching people.
yeah, and I like that because I don't think you can teach. I'm going to say no to teach. Teaching is a no. And I started doing research, you
Oh,
know me,
good. Educate
geeky,
me.
geeky Amy. One of the things I'm going to quote it is mindset, or I'm sorry, confidence is not something that can be learned like a set of rules. You
Okay.
know, you think about you teach somebody a sequence or a rule or something like that. Confidence is a state of mind. Positive thinking, practice, training, knowledge, and talking to other people are all useful ways to help improve or boost your confidence levels. So you can boost your confidence, but you can't learn confidence.
And I like you saying in there boost and improve, because confidence isn't just a thing that you have or don't have.
Yeah.
So if I'm a very confident person to a fault sometimes, and so
Yeah.
if somebody else were to say, she's confident, I want to be like her, right? That's not realistic, but you can boost it. So people have different layers of a baseline, right, for confidence and how they want to improve it. So it's all about boosting it or going to an optimal level that it's not an impediment and it's comfortable, right? Isn't
Right.
that the whole thing about the level of confidence that is best for somebody is when you get it to be comfortable and it's not an obstacle, but instead it opens opportunities.
Right. And there's a reason that we are more confident as we age because we have more experiences to help build our confidence. Because I think one of the articles I read is getting outside your box helps you build your confidence. So
Okay.
when you're constantly getting outside your comfort zone, And as you age, you have more opportunities to get outside your comfort zone. And
Mhm.
then that helps with your confidence.
I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I think too, with confidence, for me, and kind of being on that, it hasn't really been an issue. I think a lot of it is growing up in a small town without helicopter parents. But if I wanted to do something, I was putting myself out there all the time. And it was all on me, right? And so your point on getting older and getting outside the box, I think the more experiences you have where you're susceptible to failure, to how people look at you, the quicker you learn too that it's not as big of a deal as you thought. You have confidence in your confidence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you just know that you just keep trying, you keep doing different things. So I found several articles on ways to boost your confidence.
Okay.
And some of them, great tips, great, great ideas. But this one I thought was like, all right. So number 5 of this one was be fearless. I was like, okay, doesn't it require confidence to be fearless?
Right.
Like, you can't like just say be fearless. You
How do
have
you
to,
be successful? You win.
right?
Right. Tips for success. We'll win.
Exactly. I was just like, all right, well, that's a little bit of a stretch, but it does say failing isn't your enemy. So I think what it's trying to say is fearing failure sometimes stops us from trying new things. So the gist of it is you're not fearless. You're just accepting that you're going to encounter fear. I think that's more of what they meant to say. And
And
it's
it's
okay.
and I embrace failure. I mean, because it's inevitable. And if you don't have failure, I think you win more out of the failure, and you learn more from it, and you savor the victories more because of it.
Yeah.
So you do have to get past fearing failure. It can be accepting. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to catapult off of it, but sometimes at my stage of my life, it's like, okay, that was pretty bad, but what did I learn from it? Maybe never to do it again, or am I going to do it better? Or is
Yeah.
it really that big of a deal? Perspective. Okay, I failed at that. Is it that important?
So here's a question. Were you that fearless in your 20s?
I don't know if I ever call myself fearless, because I'm really not a huge, I don't know if I ever would put fearless as, an adjective for myself.
Yeah.
Um, I would say I've always been confident, but I don't take on like anything. I'm not a thrill seeker. I I'm more than content like being in the middle. I don't have to be at the top. I don't have to say I've scaled a mountain or, won a Pulitzer Prize.
Okay, so let me ask a different way.
Okay.
Have you always not been afraid of failure? How about that? Like in your 20s, were you afraid of failure?
Probably not. I don't think I ever focused so much on the failure, but worked harder at getting what I wanted. So the failure was just part of that. And maybe it just motivated me. I don't know if I ever, I don't think I've ever really thought so much about the failure part or about the downside as much as focusing on the upside.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's back to, I think we talked about what's the worst case. I've always been that way. Well, I'm not going to die. Okay. So I'm okay. I'm a kind of like, what's a worst case scenario? And then after I think about it, it's like, oh, well, that's livable.
Right. I will say I'm a lot like you in that stance, but I will say my teenage years, I was a lot more cautious. Just
Probably,
because,
maybe.
and I will tell you what changed, what switched for me was my senior year when we moved to a new school. I had to move my senior year and I had to start all over with friends and everything like that. And it was a big school, and I'd always been going to a little school. And so there was lots of fear in there, just like innately lots of fear of, okay, who are my friends gonna be? What classes am I gonna take? Oh, I have to do these just to graduate, all these requirements that weren't required before. So there was a lot of maneuvering that year. But then when I went to college the next year,
You were
it
right.
was exactly, it was like, all right, look what I did. I was scared that year, but I just kept moving forward and handling it and taking care of it. But that year built my confidence for that year of college. And I always, although I did not like that senior year, I wouldn't recommend doing that to any child. It was a huge boost in my confidence to go through that. And I don't know if I would be in the same state that I am now if I would have stayed at our school, the small school, small community. I don't know what I would have gone on to do beyond that.
Such a good point about change and about, you know, between being, you know, being confident, being fearless, not what you worry about, what you think about. When there's little change in your life, right?
Yeah.
That can help too, because you feel pretty comfortable around the people and the circumstances. So you tend to be more confident because you can jump into things. And when you're thrown into a big change, my gosh, you have really prepared yourself. So then when you go, like your comment on high school to college, that was just a little baby step.
Right. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'd already figured out what worked and what didn't work for me.
Mhm.
It was easy. Okay. So another tip, on 10 ways, and this one, it was, stand up for yourself. And that was another one that I was like, all right, well, that requires some confidence just to do the first time.
You know, one of the reason I brought up this topic, or from my standpoint, was I saw a post from a female same age as me, and she talked about how it took her until her 50s to be confident in herself and to put herself first, to think. And I thought, how sad, when I say how sad, we talk a lot about teaching confidence in our kids, right? Helping equip them. And I'm thinking that's a long time to worry about what people think. I'm so glad she has it now. And it led me to the question of, can you coach or teach that? It's not a, hey, I got it, yay. It's such an empowering thing to have confidence in yourself and to not overly worry about what people think about you, have a bad image of yourself. And so how do you empower other women to feel the same way? And one thing I'll say is, after you just quoted out of your research, there are people that have been knocked down, right? And whether it was, I think in her case, it was probably an ex-husband, and sometimes it's a boss. Unfortunately, it's women to other women, right? And so there's the other side of what brings you down, that makes you question yourself and think, maybe I'm not worthy, or am I really going to put myself out there? Because last time I did, I really got my wings clipped, right? And that's a hard thing to get over, because it's pretty easy to be the one to clip the wings or kick the dog, right? And it has a lot of impact. And that's a tough thing to get over, right? Because it's a mindset.
Right. And if you have people in your life that are constantly keeping you in check and making sure that you're not feeling confident, then it takes a lot to overcome that. Yeah.
And this gets back to the coaching, because as I thought through that and thought, okay, do I make things better or worse by saying, not saying, by projecting, just do it, you can do it, because they have more baggage than I have. I'm lucky in that regard, right?
Right.
And on one level, what I try to do when I thought about it is if somebody will overly worry about something, or they'll talk to me and say, I don't know, should I do that? It is a lot of coaching. It's trying to coach through, what do you have to lose? Is that loss too much? Take a baby step. Don't tell them what they want to hear, right? Tell them, be honest in what they need to help them keep going, right? And move up. Or a good example I give that I hear a lot is people overthinking what somebody thought about them, or creating a narrative, right? Like, oh my gosh, I really think I upset my boss when I did this because I spoke up at this meeting and I shouldn't have done that. Should I send an apology? And I just had a really weird, there we go. Should I send an apology? What should I do about this? And if you can talk them and coach them through it, you can find out that maybe they just need to, stop telling yourself narratives and just ask the question, right? Have a conversation, but have the confidence to have that conversation, because if their opinion matters, it's worth you having a conversation with them. Giving the confidence in the conversations that matter with the people that are worthy of being open-minded about it. And if the person isn't, then it's like, don't beat yourself up over it.
It's interesting. I participated in a networking session yesterday, and one of the things that we talked about were boundaries. And one of the women, we were talking about frustrations and jobs, and our jobs, and our work, and our business. This is all business owners.
Mhm.
And so it was this one lady, she talked about the frustration and not having good boundaries, of people disrespecting her boundaries. So they're canceling appointments, then
Right.
she's having to shuffle around next week's appointments to accommodate them, and or going into family time. And she was feeling this frustration. And one of the things that she came to the realization was that she needed to have the conversation with people, because she'd never told them that this was a problem. And that she just was building this resentment and getting the frustration. And it reminded me of when I had a client who did the same thing to me many times. And I ignored it for a long time. Then I dreaded working with this. I dreaded scheduling this person on my schedule, because
Right.
I knew I could drive to her house and I could be standing at the door, ringing the doorbell, nobody's there. And then I text her and she's like, oh, I made a hair appointment. It was something just, just her, she just didn't feel to me like she was valuing my time. Okay.
Boom.
Boom. So then, after being upset and I'm ready to break off the relationship, I'm like, okay, I'm done. And so I set a very clear boundary and I said, listen, here's the deal. I am no longer going to come here and here are the boundaries. If I show up, you're not here, here's the consequence. And I just laid it out. And she was so apologetic. She was like, I get it. Yes, I will pay you for your time if you show up here. It was the whole agreement. And she never did it again. Once we had,
And she took it very well.
she took it well. I don't, her awareness that it was an issue was, there was no awareness that this was a problem. I think she was used to people just bowing over and not confronting her, because she was kind of an affluent type of person who could make or break my career, probably, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, I stood up to her and I'm like, listen, here's the boundary, here are the consequences. She never did it again. We ended up having a great relationship for many years after that, to the point where we ended up being really good friends. And she moved away and I went and I visited her in another state. And it was just like, oh my gosh, we now see each other's value. We now understand each other. But it took a lot of confidence to like draw that boundary and just say, here it is.
And that is one of the toughest things about the value proposition. I always speak on value. Is
Yeah.
it's so easy to talk about with yourself and internalize and say, here are my core values. Here's what I need to be valued for. And I'm going to value other people, but it's not, it's external as much as it's internal. And a lot of it is vocalizing and having hard conversations too, because it's not a yes or no. I'm not being valued. I'm going to walk away. You're not seeing me for my value. I'm going to leave. That takes a conversation and the response to that conversation, right? So there's different levels of confidence. It's confidence in having the first conversation and then gauging the reaction. Did the nature of that change? Is it a valued relationship back and forth? Because let's say she didn't respond the way she did. She didn't value your time. She told you because that probably happens more often than not. Oh, makes so much sense, I'm sure. But then it continues to happen over and over again. Maybe she even pays you, but actually being paid for it still doesn't feel very valued because you're not going to expect it, right?
Right. Yes.
So then it takes even more confidence because that's when you say, you know what, we're going to take the high road and on a good note, we're just going to say this isn't working out. That takes a lot of confidence too. And those are the ones that are hard for me because I can sit here and say, yeah, I'm confident, but it's the hard conversations and in confidence in standing up for yourself and keeping that line drawn in the sand. Because what I struggle with is I can have the confidence to have the hard conversation and then I get soft. Well, maybe it's just me. Maybe we'll do that whole thing about be quiet after you and let them answer, that silence thing is not my forte. And that doesn't bode well in making a confident decision, right? And standing by it.
Yeah. There's a lot of self-talk that has to go in for me to walk up and say, okay, here's the boundary that I'm setting, and then just sitting there in that and letting them respond because then I'm like, but if this doesn't work, and it starts to get all squishy. Yeah, exactly. So one thing that I learned many years ago in a presentation, have you ever heard of the power pose?
Mm-mm.
This is a physiological thing that you can do, and a lot of people do it before they go and present something, or there's something they need to like get their adrenaline going, they just need to like pump up. And it's standing with I think you stand with like your feet apart a little and you put your hands on your hips and you stand there for like 2 minutes. And
Nice.
yes. And there is scientific evidence that that is a physiological boost in your confidence and your energy. And I didn't look it up. But it's look it up. There's a video on it. There's a TED Talk. I believe there's a TED Talk. I'll find it and I'll post it in the show notes because it's really interesting because it actually affects your body.
And I would tell you, when you say that, it reminds me of back when I would be doing networking with a lot of men. A lot of it was the stance. And when you talk about that, it's like, that would be the way I would stand. And it would make a big difference on how approachable I was. And if I was treated as the person to collect the discarded glasses and plates, or if I was sought out to have a conversation and trade business cards. But the pose, and I was very, again, I just knew when you go in, I might only stand 5'4", but I got to look like I'm about 5'6" and have that presence. And now I'm probably 5'3". God only knows.
Well, I think I think a lot of us have that natural awareness that if I go out and exercise, I feel more empowered in a conversation, so I'm going to go out and get my adrenaline going, and then I can come back and sit down and do this and have this conversation. Or I do this standing posture and it makes me feel more confident. So some of us have that awareness about us. Because I
You know,
think exercise makes a big difference for me. Just getting fresh air and
mhm.
getting outside and coming, it clears all my thoughts. And so
Right.
I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to have the conversation.
You know, one thing that came to mind as we're talking about the tough conversations and how it gets more difficult as you go. In my experience, the conversations that were the most difficult because there was no change and I needed to end whatever type of relationship, business, civic, what have you. You know, they were the easiest conversations because I had made the right call that it wasn't going to move on. They could have cared less. I
Yeah.
mean, I could tell you because they didn't care. They didn't value it, so they didn't care. Move on to the next one. And so what was hard for me, because I had spent a lot of time saying, do I cut the ties or not? I tell you, the choice was the right one. I often talk about how I resigned from this big position I had. It was a civic, and I was all balled up about it. And I called and made the call, and I looked at my phone afterwards, and the conversation was like 1 minute and 2 seconds because, you know, best of luck, done. And
Done.
it took a lot of confidence for me to do that. But if I look back at those where I really had to say, Sandy, you got this, and get my pose and make the phone call, it wasn't a big deal on the other side because it was the right choice, right? So do we overthink the things that we really have to work on confidence? We also have to think about the other party, and not that they don't matter. You need to have the conversation, but sometimes the hard conversations are only hard for us, right?
Right.
Sometimes,
Yeah. And sometimes we're just building it up in our head.
right?
Be a really big deal.
Or like
And
your lady that ended up being a client and said, oh my gosh, what a great point. Then it's a great conversation. But telling stories to ourselves usually doesn't do a lot of good other than provide a lot of, it doesn't get to a resolution, right?
no, no, no. Yeah. It just spins around in your head until
Mhm.
you take an action and get it out of your head. Interesting. Very interesting. All right. So, what other ways do you build confidence or create the mindset? So, I'm asking that because I went to a networking group and I didn't necessarily enjoy it because it felt very fluffy. It felt like there were a bunch of people surrounding me, surrounding everybody, and saying, oh, we are here to lift each other up. We are here to help you build your confidence. We are here to make you feel valued. We are here. And I had never met any of these people before. And I remember thinking, yeah, I don't, this isn't where I'm at right now. This is
Right.
not what I need. Like, you guys are not gonna help me. I need XYZ, which is I need people who value my work that want to hire me. I need
I
this.
want
I
to
don't,
learn about you, networking, listening, you know,
yes,
answering your question, what's the best way to coach confidence? Listen and authentically give feedback, have conversations, you know, learn about the person. And you're giving them confidence by hearing their story, what drives them, seeing their value, giving them inside, you know, input. It's a lot of listening.
a lot of listening and learning. And yeah, a part of, yeah, it was, I just realized that I want to make authentic connections. I don't want fake connections of people who think that they're there just to lift me up when they don't even know me, and I don't know them. So it was really like, all right, I don't think this is my group because they don't even know me and they're saying this stuff. Like, it was just very uh fake to me.
So really, I swear I'll be really quick, but you just triggered a memory with me. And I was at a networking event. I was going through my divorce. I hadn't told anyone yet. And of all people, it was actually the lady that was giving the talk on, it was I don't, it was either strengths, colors, it was some sort of an assessment. And somehow I was talking with her and I made a comment about the assessment saying, this isn't what, I don't think this is what my husband wants of me or something. And she looked at me and said, maybe he's not the right person for you. Maybe there's something else in your future. And at that time in my life, all I could think about was trying to make my marriage work and how I needed to form. And here was this perfect stranger. And all it took, like we're talking about, she listened to me and she probably heard that catch in my voice. She might have recognized it. And her words were authentic. And she made a little comment that had to do with my assessment, but that has stayed with me for a long time. And when you talked about networking, I'm like 5 minutes a time of somebody listening to me and authentically giving me some feedback that I needed at the time meant a ton. And it stuck with me even during that time. I kept thinking, you know what? Stop trying to put myself into a box and think outside the box. But I was lacking confidence at that time. And
Right.
that helped me in my confidence because I was able to, she basically coached me to relook at things and knowing that I'm the only person that can change if I need to change. Right. And so it was really a good lesson.
And the choices are up to you,
Choices are up to me.
right?
She redirected.
Whether you're gonna make yourself into this for this, or if you're gonna make yourself into what you want to be.
Right. Or
Yeah.
let it freely take the direction without, but it took that extra set of eyes and somebody to take the time. And I was lacking confidence. And it just took a little bit of a boost like that to say, okay, I got this. Just
Right.
stop overthinking this little segment. She redirected me.
Was she a therapist? Because I feel like therapists do that a lot. Like they can pull things from you that you don't even realize that you're saying. At least for me, it's like, oh, I didn't even realize when you put all of these things that I've said together that it looks like this. And that's where I need to do something different or think
She
something.
was actually like a very well-known businesswoman in the community.
Wow.
A CEO of a company, but it was a not-for-profit. So,
Yeah. Well,
but,
good.
and maybe
Yeah.
here's the thing, you just never know, back to listening. I would tell you now after the fact, she probably went through the same thing, right? And I
Yeah.
bet by listening, she could identify with where I was at. That's what that would be because it was a little bit of a serendipity moment of somebody saying the right thing at the right time and a stranger, right? It was impactful.
That is impactful.
No fluffy there.
No fluffy there. Very good. Okay, very good conversation. Okay, let's go back to the question. Can you teach confidence? Are we still on the same page?
I think you can't teach confidence, but I think you can coach it.
I am with you. I think it is definitely through coaching and through experiences is how you get your confidence
Mhm.
through doing.
Yep.
All right, the real and ideal in this. I'll just say I think the real is we all have times where we are not at our most confident. That is our real. Like
Right.
everybody has moments where they're doubting themselves, they have an inner critic, there's something happening that they have imposter syndrome. Like there's all these things that we have maybe not all the time, but there's moments that it's like, and then, what do we do to get through that?
It's hard.
Yeah. And then the ideal,
The ideal is to keep working on it and, boost yourself, put yourself out there, take baby steps if you need to. The ideal is to increase your confidence to a level that you have happiness and fulfillment and you're opening yourself up for opportunities, but don't try to gauge yourself to someone else. We all approach things differently and we all have a different baseline and different end goals. right? And different life experiences that shaped where you're at today.
Yeah. And people don't really aren't thinking about you. That's what I will say. Like a lot of people, we're like, think, what are people going to think about me?
They're
People,
not.
they're not. Exactly. So just take that with you and say, all right, nobody's going to remember this
And
but
that
me.
actually helps me a lot with my confidence because I'm like, who really cares? They'll forget about it by tomorrow. I mean,
I know. When I travel, I'm always like, I can wear that outfit. People are never going to see me again.
right. It's all good. They don't care. We all think we
Exactly.
do. I mean, we find things interesting and we move on, right? And don't
Exactly.
ever, but then also the ideal is not to say, that's not me. I'm just not a confident person. Get that out of your head, you know? Be a
Yeah.
little bit more confident than you were yesterday if it's worth you jumping into, right? Or it's worth something for you to do to feel better about yourself.
Yes. Yes. Well said. All right. Well, thank you, Sandy.
All right. I want to say aye, aye, Captain. I love all the Navy stuff. And
And
next time we'll keep checking our basketball scores.
hoorah.
All right.
See
Bye,
ya.
Amy.